Hello, this is Dr. Lee Hildebrand, coming to you today with a YouTube video that I think will have a universal appeal in regard to this topic. And that is how to stop unhealthy people pleasing. This is something we often hear about in a wide array of circles. And I'll never forget when I was talking with one of my mentors back in the day, then I made some comment where I said, I just really don't want to be too much of a people pleaser. And she stopped me and she said, I want you to know I really like the quality about you that you want the best for others and that you do try to please them in situations. And so this ensued a discussion about people pleasing and whether or not it's always unhealthy. And so what I'd like to do with our time today is first of all focus on what is healthy people pleasing. And then secondly, to talk about how does people pleasing become unhealthy and really dysfunctional for us in regard to our approach with other people. And then lastly, I'd like to talk about how to be healthy in our approach with people along these lines. So first off, let's start off with what is healthy people pleasing. Wanting the best for other people can be very positive. In fact, we live in a world at times where there can be a good bit of self-centeredness. We can all get caught up in what our particular needs are and sometimes neglect the needs of other people. That can be really important to notice. So I think healthy people pleasing starts with an earnest and genuine desire to seek the best in others, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In essence, the golden rule. Wanting fairness with other people, wanting to have your needs not just trump theirs in situations, but having a balance in terms of that. Healthy people pleasing can be a desire to serve, really wanting to have a servant leadership approach to relationships in your life. And that is in seeking to influence others positively to emulate or demonstrate to them your care and your love for them. You're valuing them as a person by doing acts of service or paying attention to things that are important to them. And that can really be a type of servant leadership. And this gets emulated and talked about in many circles. One of the quintessential examples is the figure of Jesus, who truly demonstrated in a lot of situations that servant leader type approach. And of course, many others have emulated this kind of humble figure that seeks to serve and seeks to love others, who models leadership in terms of that kind of style. And lastly, the most important aspect is love. And I think one of the most important ingredients of love is when we desire the best for other people, even if it's not going to help us specifically. There may be times where we may need to let go of situations that, we really wish we could have. In fact, I had a couple the other day that I was meeting with, and they'd had tremendous difficulties in their relationship for many years. And they tried and tried and tried. There were some impasses and some dysfunctional patterns that seemed to keep them from really joining together. And one of the partners came to the conclusion and just said, this is just not good for me. This impasse that we're in, this purgatory that we're in. And the other partner really had a hard time letting go. And this was an example of, and I asked them, do you want the best for the other person? And sometimes when we want the best for another person, we encourage their needs, even if it won't be our absolute and best case scenario. One example of this is if you're working with certain people and they decide that they're going to go in a different direction. For instance, if you're a leader in the workplace and one of your employees or your staff decides that they need to make a change, if we're really caring about them as a whole person and they're very valuable in the workplace, it takes love to say, hey, you know what? I love having you here. You add so much value, but I value you more so as a person in terms of your life and your family and the direction that you're trying to go, that, hey, I want to support you. So even though, yes, I'm disappointed that you're not going to be on our team anymore, I want to support you in what your next endeavors are. That's an example of love and healthy people pleasing and putting the needs of others sometimes before our own. Now let's explore where people pleasing can move into a range that's more unhealthy, that becomes dysfunctional, that causes distress for us. And it can become pervasive patterns that can last for many, many years and disturb or disrupt good relationships. Now, one characteristic of unhealthy people pleasing is subjecting your own needs for others frequently out of guilt. Now, what that means is you're in situations and you find your mind saying, I'm going to feel so guilty if I don't do this, or if I don't let them have this because they really want this, even though I don't know it's the healthiest thing, like they want this and I want them to be pleased with me. And I don't want to feel guilty if they're like mad at me or they're upset with me. So guilt combined with shame right next to that can be really powerful drivers for us to do what other people want. And that is a situation where it becomes more unhealthy. Because what's happening is we're starting to subjugate. We're starting to push down our own valid and important needs in some situations in order to people please out of fear, guilt, and then of course shame. Shame meaning I'm not enough, I'm defective somehow, they're going to reject me, they're not going to like me, I need to make them like me by doing what they want. That becomes unhealthy. And this can expand into a deep fear of losing a relationship, and it can be all kinds of relationships. And if we find ourselves in a pattern where we're willing to do anything, even if some of those things seem unhealthy, against our principles, not balanced, willing to do anything to keep the relationship or make that person happy, that becomes dysfunctional. And it becomes something that creates dissonance or a conflict inside of ourselves and does not produce a sense of healthiness in the relationship where we would be respected by the other person. It's very hard to respect somebody that says yes all the time and will just do absolutely everything. It might feel good for a while, but a healthy person on the other end of that kind of relationship is going to have a hard time respecting the consummate unhealthy people pleaser. Now, this will continue to move toward a topic that's a very popular term, and that's codependency. Now, codependency is a pattern of putting the needs of others first most of the time, related to shame or a fear of losing a relationship, and trying to control other people into you're not going to abandon me, I'm going to try to please in every way I can to make you stay with me or to make you like me. And that pattern can become very disruptive, and it can lead us into the inability of saying a healthy, no, I can't do this, or unfortunately not at this time, or that's not going to work for me. In healthy relationship, it's important that there is some give and take depending on the relationship. So these are real signs. If you get into a pattern of subjecting your own needs consistently out of guilt just to do what the other wants, that can be a big red flag that you are getting into unhealthy people-pleasing patterns that will not serve you well in developing healthy relationships. And if you have this tendency, what can happen is certain personality types will take advantage of this. For instance, a narcissistic personality, somebody who wants everything to be about themselves, has difficulty having empathy for others, and these people will be very attracted to a people pleaser. If they can find a people pleaser that will do anything to make them happy or try to, that's very attractive to the narcissist. And the narcissist will bring those people in close. And it can appear at first that those relationships, because they dovetail, those two personality types dovetail so well together, it can appear that it's a good relationship and that it's healthy. Unfortunately, over time, that pattern will become very toxic. The narcissist will become more controlling and will become more manipulative in continuing to get that narcissistic supply. In other words, that continued message from the people pleaser person that you're the best, your needs are more important than anybody's, let me continue to massage your ego. And the people pleaser will reach a point where they recognize no matter what I do for this person, they're still going to continue to get mad or be manipulative or not pay any attention to my needs. So those are some examples of unhealthy people pleasing. Let's talk about our third category, and that is, how do we generally seek to be healthy in the realm of seeking to please or to serve other people? I think the most important part of that is to have a good sense of yourself and who you are, and to have faith. And what that means is, it can mean a number of things for you, but it's to have faith in what's important to you. It could be a spiritual faith in regard to who you are in the universe, your relationship, your connection to God, or some other spiritual aspect of that, and a sense of value that's inherent there, that recognizes that you have inherent value. Regardless of what you do, you have inherent value, and that it's appropriate to steward or take care of yourself. It's appropriate for you to identify your needs and needs that are valued, and to navigate that along with seeking to do and treat others as you would have them treat you. So it recognizes value both of yourself and your needs, and it recognizes value of the needs of others around you. Secondly, a great criterion to ask yourself, or a question to ask yourself when you're doing something for another person, is, am I choosing to do this because I want to? It's something that I'm choosing to do, or am I doing this out of guilt because I just feel like I have to, or they're going to get mad at me, or they're not going to like me? If you're finding your choices lean more out of guilt, that's not a healthy pattern. So a great way to start to slow this down, if you find yourself in a people-pleasing kind of pattern, is to hit pause, and when somebody asks you something, say, you know what, let me get back to you. Let me just check my schedule and get back to you. Give yourself the opportunity to evaluate whether or not you're able to do what's being asked of you for this person, or if it's a favor or some other thing, and evaluate it, maybe even get some feedback on it before you come back for a response. If you answer in the minute and you're a yes person, yes, 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 okay, you want this from me? Yes. You can find yourself making commitments and saying yes to things that really are not appropriate for you to be doing. And it's hard to say yes and then go back and say, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to do it. That can be very hard. So it's better to give yourself an opportunity to consider. And then if you look at the situation and say, I really do want to do this for this person, or this is not a problem, I'd like to do this for this person, then you're doing it out of choice. And when you're doing it out of choice, it's love. When you're doing it out of guilt, it's codependency. So it's a really important distinction for us to keep in mind. And lastly, in regard to your relationships overall, I really believe that there are three categories of relationships that we mainly have in our lives. and that there needs to be a balance in these. The first category over here are relationships where you are primarily being served by other people. This could be mentors, it could be a parent, it could be pastors, it could be other types of leaders, bosses, etc. Maybe that's not a great example, it depends. Where they're primarily focused on your growth and serving you. Over here on this side are situations where you're primarily the giver in a relationship. These could be situations where it's expected as part of the relationship where you give out, you pour out. It's really about helping the other person. The middle category of the three categories are relationships that are reciprocal. Give and take. Sometimes you're helping them, they're helping you. You're working together. You're both conscious of one another's needs. I submit to you that sometimes people get extremes. They get tons of relationships where they're the giver. Giving, and they don't have many reciprocal relationships, and they don't have many situations where people are pouring into them, and they can get burned out. The opposite extreme, if you have relationships where it's always about you, you can become stagnant from a growth standpoint and a maturity standpoint. So it's important in those three categories: reciprocal relationships, relationships where I'm primarily the giver, and relationships where others are pouring into my life, have some semblance of balance. So those are some principles that can really help you as you're considering how you approach this topic of how do I serve others in healthy ways without falling into the trap of consistent and unhealthy people pleasing. I hope that you found this helpful today, and please feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I do many videos on health and wellness and many aspects in regard to how we can seek to live our best life. So wish you well, and thank you so much for tuning in today.